Again, we are at the coding. You're at the coding track. This is how to land your first developer job. Caitlin, good friend, is heading this up or moderating it. And she's got two fantastic gents with her.
I sure do.
Yeah.
And Keela is the track captain for the coding track for Dallas Startup Week, for those of you who may not know. A legend.
Until
He's
further
a legend
notice.
after his last talk. His sunglass wearing, LaCroix drinking talk that just happened.
Yeah, I might be banned from all Dallas Startup Week events after that.
You might be. You might be. David and I were sitting here watching it. David's over here hanging out.
Yo, David.
Causing trouble.
Perfect.
Now you've lost your modding privileges.
I think so. But yeah, I'll let y'all kick it off. Again, Caitlin is with CodeUp, the fantastic sponsor for the coding track for this year's Dallas Startup Week. Caitlin, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Welcome, everybody. I am Caitlin Studley Potter. I work as the Director of Delivery for CodeUp. We are a 22-week career accelerator. We offer courses in Java development and data science. And we have a couple of different events. There's actually a talk immediately following this one that is hosted by our CEO, Jason Strahan. That is all talking about, I believe, imposter syndrome. So really good stuff. We have a double header today. We had one of our web dev instructors yesterday, Douglas, who just popped into the chat. He gave a really good talk on, excuse me, I can't clear my throat. Just on navigating software development for your startup. So he's a great person to talk to about that. So a little bit about my background. I started my career in insurance, so I am also a fellow career changer, not quite the same as these fine fellows joining me today. But I started my career in insurance. I pivoted into technology. I have a background in recruiting and HR operations, but primarily have been in tech for the last 6 to 7 years. So I have experienced both training developers as well as helping them get hired and hiring them. So I kind of have seen all sides of this. And it's one of my favorite conversations, if anybody knows me, so much so that I also do it on the side for a living. I do career coaching and placement and resume writing type stuff. So just a little bit about my background. And so I'm going to introduce these two gentlemen, and I'm going to let them tell you just a little bit, give a kind of high level overview of what their career changes have looked like, maybe what they were doing previously, and maybe what their job titles and kind of careers are now. And then we'll kind of dig into the meat of their career transitions and how they managed to land their first developer jobs and what that process looked like. So without further ado, let's get started. Ryan, let's start with you. If you would like to introduce yourself and talk just a little bit about kind of high level, maybe for a minute or two about your background and your career transition, and then we'll move on to Mike, and then we'll kind of get into some questions, and we're going to leave some time at the end for Q&A too. So please feel free, leave some questions in the chat for us over there, and I'll make sure that we kind of stop throughout, ask those, and make sure we can get through some of those. So.
Okay, yeah. So to start out, I think it's important to note that in high school, middle school, elementary school, I was always bad at math and science. And I think I graduated high school with a 3.2 grade point average. Like, I was terrible at everything. So after high school, I ended up moving to Colombia for 2 years, and I was a missionary there. And then when I got back after 2 years, I decided to go to college for a semester. I hated it. I almost failed my science course, got like a D in it. I was definitely not prepped for that. And yeah, I think my first week in college, I was like, forget this, I'm going to go join the Marine Corps. And so like my very first week, like on a Friday, I called up a recruiter, and he was like, okay, we'll come into the office. Like, we can talk. I was like, no, I'm leaving. Like, I want to go. So I ended up scheduling to go like a week after the semester ended. I was at San Diego, getting yelled at and going through boot camp, and I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years. I was primarily a dog handler and trainer and doing bomb detection and that sort of thing. And then when I got out, I tried to sign up for a little bit of community college, and I took a placement test for math, and I placed it was bad. I have I had the math level of like a middle schooler, if that. So it was bad. So I ended up doing security contracting as a dog handler, like private sector at the Baghdad embassy. And I did that, got sick of it. And the last time I was supposed to go like a week out, I called Code up, not really interested in coding. And I called up, I forgot who it was. And she was like, yeah, usually it takes a couple weeks. And I was like, no, like I need to do this like right now, because when I come back from Baghdad this next time, I'm going to Code Up, and that's kind of how it all went down. So,
and just so people who are attending know, what is your current job title and where are you working now?
Yeah, so my current job title, it sounds pretty cool. Software Engineer 3. It's not that cool. I work at USA, so yeah.
Don't sell yourself short. It's all good. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about your transition and background?
Yeah, I spent a long time as a kid, like a lot of people in the late 70s, early 80s, that's how old I am, playing video games and, like all the computer games. And I ended up in computer science for 2 years in high school. I was the kid in like 8th grade computer literacy that was going like chatting peer to peer before the teacher had told us what the mouse is, so I was really good with computers, but I decided to do music instead. And I was also a drummer since the time I was born, but officially since 4th grade, I joined band. So I did, I played music for a long time and taught it for a long time. I was a band director here in Texas. I was always the drumline guy, clicking sticks and out in front of people yelling at kids to play better. The cool band director. So I decided to get away from that, I don't know, about 5 years ago now, and ended up going to the Iron Yard boot camp. I had known a guy that was, through a friend of a friend, there was a guy that had gone to the Iron Yard in Greenville, South Carolina, the original campus. And I had just a ton of questions about it because it was a big risk for me we had 4 kids at home, and it was a big risk to not take a paycheck for a while. So went into it, was like kind of like Ryan, like this is what I'm doing now, like 180 degrees, going a different direction. Not like I'm going to try this, but like this is what's going to happen. Yeah, it worked out. And about 5 weeks after getting out of the Iron Yard at the end of 2015, I started working at Call-A-Mall, which now is called Text-A-Mall. And up in Frisco, I've been a front-end engineer there for about 4.5 years now. And I'm technically, I think, the same software engineer level 3 technical lead, something like that. So we're still working on our titles, but that's what it is currently. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you so much. So let's start. Why don't we just talk a little bit more in depth? You kind of gave us the high level version of what your career change looked like, but can you talk to us a little bit more in depth about what was it actually like transitioning out of your former career into development? And, maybe if there's anything in particular about that transition that stands out for you, I'll kind of let you guys go from there, and then we can kind of shape the questions as we go. But I don't know who wants to take that one first. Maybe Mike, do you want to start with that one and talk maybe a little bit more about the specifics and logistics of what that transition looked like for you? I mean, band director to web developer is a pretty big career change. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like actually going through the process of, thinking about what it actually would take to land a software developer job after that transition.
I started with what can I do? And then when I talked to a friend, he's like, yeah, you used to be into computer science. And I was like, oh yeah. So that's when I talked to my friend Daniel, who's the friend of a friend that went to Iron Yard. And then I started looking at, okay, what in the profession I was in, there would be in the Dallas Metroplex area, there's a lot of high schools, and I could have done, moved around to different schools if I didn't like the situation I was in, or look for, maybe a pay raise, which is minimal because teachers, right? But it was like, there might be like 3 jobs open a year for that kind of thing. So then it's just like if one person moves, then all the dominoes fall and everybody else moves in one position around. And I looked up jobs for front-end engineering in Dallas, and I tried to weed out all the remote ones. And there was something like 900 legit jobs in Dallas in 2015. And I was like, oh, okay, this seems like it's pretty reasonable. Like after that was more of a getting into the details of like the specific code school I was going to get into. I started learning, like doing some, I went to Code Academy and made a free account. I don't know if it's the same now, but you used to be able to do quite a bit of stuff on there for free, and went through a lot of stuff and really liked it. I'm really good at working hard, so it wasn't like if I was stuck on something, I would just keep going through it and try to figure out the reason why I wasn't getting it. I just like to learn new things, so that was helpful too. But the actual, I guess the transition itself was more like, okay, I'm going to resign from teaching. I'm going to tell everybody that I'm doing this. And then I started going to meetups here in Dallas to learn a little bit about the things that are like basically like nomenclature and like what are some gotchas that I might have not seen. And of course, I started out with my story. And then I think the first one I went to was at Chirag's meetup at Node. And he's also a drummer, so we hit it off immediately. And everybody was like, you do what now? You're like, this is crazy. You're like, what do you, I've never heard of such a thing. Yeah, but I remember taking notes at a lot of those on my laptop and just like writing down stuff like, I don't know what this means. Like there's a whole text file I have of like, I don't know what any of these words mean. And it's funny because the more you hear them and the more you start using them, it all makes sense to you, right? Like, so I wanted to go into the Iron Yard or any code school with an idea of like kind of what it takes to get the job. So I kind of had a really good head start, I felt like.
Ryan, how about you? Again, pretty big career transition to go from what you were doing, especially over in Baghdad, to then becoming a software developer. Talk to us a little bit about, you kind of gave us some context, right? You did a placement test, math came back bad. It would have also come back the same for me. I'm terrible at math. I don't enjoy it at all. But talk to us a little bit about maybe more logistically, like what did it look like for you in terms of thinking about how you were actually going to land a job doing this new career?
Yeah, it's great thing about CodeUp is that's part of what you're getting is that job help, that placement. You obviously have to put in the work, but it's kind of scary. You're kind of like, all I knew was dogs. My whole professional network was in dogs. Like I still have a lot of opportunities. If I want to quit right now, I could go back and work with dogs professionally. And it's something I still do on the side. I train service dogs on the side for a nonprofit. So I'm still doing it, but it's kind of scary. And you tell people that you're going to do it. And I told people like in Baghdad, I was like, yeah, this could be my last time. They're like, oh, what are you doing? And we got paid really well to do what we were doing. And people thought I was crazy. I'm 28 years old. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's dogs. You love working with dogs. And it's like, well, you don't cuddle with dogs all day. That's not really what you do. So everybody's telling you that it's a scam, that you can't do it. And even internally, you're like, how could I, having done this my whole life, I'm terrible at science, I'm terrible at math. How could I go be a software developer? And, that I wasn't going to go back to school for 4 years. That wasn't going to happen. 28 years old, I'm 29 now, not going back to school. And I needed something quick, or relatively quick. So, kind of internally, that was kind of the process. I mean, as far as applying and stuff, luckily CodeUp doesn't just look at, or I'm assuming other coding boot camps too, don't just look at like your technical expertise starting out. And as far as coding before, I have brothers in IT, so I was kind of familiar with some of that stuff, but I didn't really have a love for coding or programming. I just wanted a job like that I could transition into that, I didn't have to work 70, 80 hours a week, stuff like that. So, it's scary overall, like the process for getting into that. So,
yeah. You made a comment earlier. That's great. I'd love to expand on. You said even with programs like CodeUp that provide kind of that career support, and Mike and I used to hang out at the Dallas Entrepreneur Center when they were in the West End. How I originally met him, he would come in and sit down next to me and workshop his resume, and we would talk about which jobs he should apply for and stuff. So very, very fond memories of the deck and getting to know Mike when I was first launching the Iron Yard campus in Dallas as the campus director. But you made a really good point. You said, no one, even with the best career accelerator program that has career support, nobody can hand you a job, right? There's still work that you have to put in. Can each of you speak a little bit to maybe what some of that work looks like from your perspective in terms of, what was the effort that you had to put in when it comes to actually searching for and landing the job? And what was that process like for you? Whoever wants to.
I'll go first. I made it my mission, obviously, like I was saying before, we had 4 kids at home, and I had taken a $0 salary right when I left my career. So it was like, I have to get a job figured out. We had a little bit of runway, but it wasn't like, take a year, because we were both teachers, So with that, it was like my job was getting a job. So every single day I was working on learning more stuff and trying to expand on the things that I learned in the code school, because it was like, here's all the ways to solve all the problems, and like kind of a pretty good in-depth version of what I went through of JavaScript and databases and stuff like that. But I wanted to learn more of that stuff, so I started learning like Angular and stuff like that. I'd work at home or at the library or at Starbucks. In addition to that, like Caitlin was saying, I was kind of the ex officio first Iron Yard Dallas person, because I had graduated in Austin, but then she had started the Dallas campus and there weren't any students yet. So I used to hang out with her and work on my resume. And I was really targeting, like I knew where I wanted to work or like what kind of place. So I wanted to work in a place that really understood themselves, was probably a little smaller. For instance, I have an uncle that works at AT&T, and he's like, oh, you could probably apply to AT&T. And I was like, it seems kind of big. I don't know much about AT&T. Maybe they have small teams, but I really wanted to work in a smaller team that was like, this is our values and our mission. And when I found Call 'em All, there's a manifesto on the website, and I was like, whoa, like this is exactly what I wanted to do. So I applied to a few places. I worked with one recruiter because that was the place I wanted to apply to, and they only accepted people with CS degrees. And I was like, okay, you're lost. Moved on. And then really I had lined up like 3 interviews. And then when I took the Call 'em All interview, I interviewed with them, and they offered me the job like 20 minutes later. So I never took the other interviews. It was kind of like my first interview was my first job. I'm still there. So it doesn't work like that with everybody. But I know that, like I run the React.js Dallas meetup. So I end up having these kind of talks a lot with individuals before and after meetings. But I'd say that, persevering and getting your name out there, continuing to learn and showing that learning, like through GitHub and blogs and stuff like that. I'm probably stepping on your future questions. Sorry, Caitlin. But yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that I'm hoping that you guys will talk about. What made you successful, right? Obviously, there were some other factors apart from the fact that, they found you charming in the interview, right? Like you had to have demonstrated some level of competency and impressed them with your technical knowledge in the interview. So I'm curious, like what is everything that goes into that? So that's perfect.
Well, there's more to that then. On that one, I'm sorry, Ryan, I'll get you in just a second. On that one, it was like, I remember being at Call 'em All maybe 6, sat through multiple interviews at that point with for other candidates. And I was like, we keep like whiteboarding with these people. Like I didn't whiteboard. So I asked another engineer, I was like, hey, I didn't do all these things that we've been doing, all these candidates. Like, why didn't y'all do that? And they're like, oh, you had so many GitHub repositories out there. And, because of the way you did your coding challenge, basically, we could tell that you knew your stuff. And I was like, oh. And, I had like 50 or 60 GitHub repositories because all my homework from the Iron Yard had gone up there. And you could see like, I know nothing all the way through like, I can build apps, It was kind of cool. But yeah, that was really, really helpful. And I hopefully people are doing that, at least learning some things and putting them into repos, even if it's like, if you're keeping stuff in private repos, that's fine, but I would make some of them public, Take it away, Ryan.
No, I think we can quit right there. That was good. Yeah, so I think as far as like kind of prepping for the interview or kind of landing that interview, when I started going to Code Up, or even before, I was 100% committed. Like that was what I was going to do. I wasn't going back. I think that was kind of the same thing as Mike. Like that's what I was doing. Like whether, I got kicked out of Code Up and had to continue coding on my own, or, or whatever. It took a while to find a job. Like I was 100% committed. Like he said it was like his job. Like that's how I looked at it. That was my purpose in life at that time for those about 6 months. And before your interview, your prep starts before. It's not just getting in the interview, what to say. It's how did you prep before? As soon as you make the decision that you want this as your career path, that's when you start prepping for your interview. And I think before, because you do mock interviews at CodeUp prior to doing actual interviews, and I think it was like a month and a half before my interview, or our mock interview, I like had note cards and I was just writing out like if they asked me what OOP was or what Java was, like I wanted a quick answer. I didn't want to fumble around. I could just spit it out. And I was like making these cards, and then people were like making fun of me. Like they're like, "Oh, Ryan, what are you doing? We're good." And I'm like, "No, we're not. We're not." Just because you go to a coding boot camp, and they even offer job placement or anything like that, you are still responsible for what happens to you. Can't blame the coding boot camp. I mean, to a certain extent, of course, but you just even if they do mess up, you need to take personal responsibility for your life. So your prep starts before your interview, and then as far as like in the interview, I'm sure we're going to get more in depth in that. Where Mike was talking about his GitHub, like I already showed proof that I could code. I had applications or multiple applications. Like I had stuff, like it was obvious, like I had coded. And then I liked what Mike said too. It was like the way you solved problems in interviews. I don't have a CS degree. A lot of people don't. You need to show them that just because if they give you 15 minutes to solve an interview question, don't answer it in a minute. That doesn't show them how you think, how you solve problems. Take that 15 minutes, show them that even if you can't get to the right answer, you know how to solve problems. And that's really what you're doing with programming. But so
awesome. Love it. Yeah, thank you so much. And you've sort of touched on some of this along the way in both of your answers, but I'll ask it outright. What was the most difficult part about your job search and actually landing a role and making that a reality, right? Because that's a pretty scary thing when you're like, I'm gonna quit whatever I'm doing and I'm going all in on this. And something I noticed that you both mentioned was that was a reality you spoke into existence, right? You got the buy-in from the people around you and the accountability. You were like, this is the thing I'm doing. You didn't do it in secret. You were like, hello world. Do you like that? You're like, hello world. I'm going to become, a software developer. Talk to me about like, what was the hardest part about actually doing that and actually landing a role? People are booing me in the comments. Shut up. You all loved it. Ryan, do you want to take that one first, maybe?
Yeah. So I think one of the great things about coming into not just this career field, but maybe jumping career fields, is I had a lot of soft skills before I even got in there. Like I already had to deal with difficult people. I've already had to talk to people. I've already developed all these soft skills, and the coding bootcamp kind of made up for the technical aspect. And so you get a lot of, not to say like fresh college students right out of college don't have life experience, because they definitely do. But working in a professional capacity gave me a lot of skills that helped me in my interviews. So I would just kind of leverage those. That's kind of my short answer. I kind of forgot the rest of it.
It's all good. Mike, do you have anything that stands out as the hardest in terms of actually like landing a job? I know once you got into the interview, it seemed like you were okay, but did you have any moments where you're like, this thing sucks, or this is super hard, or I can't, like what was the hump for you maybe? Like what was the difficult part?
I mean, the difficult part for me was this is hopefully what nobody else does, but I moved to Austin for my coding boot camp and only came home most of the weekends. So my wife was at home with the 4 kids and doing everything. So I have paid her back gently over the last 5 years. Believe me, I have taken all the kids to school and made all the laundry and stuff. So it's worked out. But like the sacrifice it takes to put that much time into something is really difficult. Getting out of it, like I think like Ryan and I both have the same idea of like, this is what I'm doing. Like he sounds like, like I'm going to code up on X day, like it bit me, like it's awesome. And some of that is, I think both of us have had a lot of experience not doing this career, right? Like, in the same way I was a teacher and dealing with 11 through 18-year-olds for years and years and years, plus all the adult staff. Teachers are sometimes the worst students. So talking to all that and getting all those soft skills in place, I just needed all that to like coalesce at the end of the code school into like, here's all my soft skills and also my technical skills, and somebody please hire me. So that's what I was just working on all those weeks afterwards to make that pay off. Just that, I mean, just really to me, like the hardest part was starting it and like going through with it, because I did see, I think I had 16 people in my class and maybe 11 of them finished or something. Like some people just didn't make it. It's like, that's a big chunk of money, y'all, to not finish this out. But I don't know, maybe grandpa paid for it. I don't know. But it wasn't the case for me. I paid for it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm new to the Hop in technology. If you guys can bear with me, I think that we have someone requesting audio video join so that they can ask a question. So I'm going to try and add them right now so they can ask their question. So if this goes terribly awry, you can blame me, or maybe you can blame Keela. He's the one to blame if anything goes wrong. So Chinwei, I'm going to add you and see if this works. Do we have one more person on here? I don't know if it worked or not. Here we go. Hi there. Did you have a question for the panel? Maybe. Okay.
Oh, that might have been a mistake.
It had a request for audio, so maybe that was not, not a question. Just a mistake. Looks like maybe not great user interface on the phone app. So we will keep pressing along. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't ignoring somebody if they were trying to ask a question. So let's talk about maybe throughout the course of this journey, did you feel like there were any mistakes that you made, or anything in particular that you learned along the way that maybe you wish you had known in the beginning? Is there anything that kind of jumps out to you about that? Like maybe like what I wish I had known now that I have the, the hindsight and the kind of retrospective. I don't know who wants to take that first.
That's a good question. I think for me, like the Iron Yard Austin, the track that I went through, there were 3 versions of it. There was like a design track and back end and front end. I did front end, and really all of us did all of it, but one of them was like really, really deep. So we did a little bit of back end, a little bit of design, and we got feedback from those people and worked on teams with them, which is really cool. But we went really into front end. So I know front end really well, and then I still feel like, my gaps are all within like database and the way APIs work and stuff like that. And a lot of progress in those areas over the last 5 years, but that's still something where, like, because I didn't have that as part of my quote unquote training, I still feel like there's things that I don't know, and I'm trying to always piece it together a little bit. That's what I probably would have wished I'd done. I think maybe now the code schools are better at doing more comprehensive, like everybody's learning kind of all of it, and you end up with a high level overview. At least I hope so.
How about you, Ryan?
I made 0 mistakes. Just kidding. No, I'm trying to think.
You're a perfect role model.
Yeah. I guess let's see. What do I like to know? Not that I didn't make any mistakes. I think it's kind of part of the process, kind of making mistakes. Maybe branch out a little bit. I did a lot. I would do at least an hour of coding every single day, or studying or something like that. So as far as like content, it was full stacks. We did front end, back end, worked with databases, but I wish maybe I would have branched out a little bit more and gotten into some newer technologies like React. But yeah, actually, you need to know about those meetups. I'm assuming they're not going on right now, but
No,
yeah.
I mean,
I posted the
now.
link in the chat. I shared the link in the chat. We'll get you the link from the meetup group.
Awesome. Yeah. Throughout the course, just I think it's like the tempo, because you're in this it's really intense. Like, I'll say, like, compared to like boot camp and stuff, it really doesn't compare. It's at boot camp, you have people screaming and kicking at you and forcing you along, and this is really like this is you and some motivation from any support staff or friends you make at these coding boot camps. And I think it was at the end of like Friday. I remember one day I was driving and I felt like drunk. Like my brain was so like just exhausted from thinking and just learning everything. It's really kind of an interesting thing that happens. And I think, making sure you get enough rest, like, don't be partying if you're in that age group or whatever. If you need to work, try and set your hours for the weekends, do what you can, but you may need to cut out things out of your life and focus on those things that you need to focus on. So I think I would have liked to have, not that I was partying or anything, but just take more, like, do my time coding and then focus on some other things to get your mind off of. I think that's because you're using your brain a lot, so you need to really, chill out, take a break. Don't take it intensely, like super seriously. Take a break. Yeah, lots of sleep, drink water, eat right. There you go.
Sounds like everybody is agreeing with you in the chat that sleep is super important. I'm curious to know, did either of you reach the point where you were dreaming in code or coding in your dreams?
Yeah, last night. I have a side project I'm working on that ships in a couple of months, and I dreamed about going to sleep about, like, I think an import statement is wrong in this one file, and I woke up and fixed it, right? Like, I couldn't wait. I got up at 5:15 in the morning and just went to work, like. Anyway, it still happened to me. Yeah, pretty much.
Crazy person.
Yeah, I know that was pretty
small business owner.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, those are pretty common occurrence. Like, I get home and, like, you just kind of like lay there and you're like, you need to go to sleep, but you're just like thinking about this one problem, and that was kind of an issue sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah. We had a question earlier from the lovely Keela. Who was asking, kind of from a company's perspective, like, as a developer, what would you want to see in a job description? So maybe we can kind of tie it back to the actual transition. Like, what were you looking for in a job description in order to be interested in that company and that role? So Mike, I know you kind of mentioned you saw the manifesto that at the time Call 'em All, now Text 'em All, had on their website, and that was really appealing to you. Can you each maybe speak a little bit to what that aspect looked like and how you were kind of qualifying what you were looking for, either in a job description or maybe like through your interview process?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, good segue. The manifesto at Call 'em All was a product of them going away to Ann Arbor, Michigan for a trip before I got there, and kind of coming up with what do we believe here? Like, we have something really cool in this company, and, like, can we codify it into these little bullet-sized, list items? And they made it fun. They had a good time. So they, when I read that, I was like, okay, this seems too good to be true. And because it was one of those things where I was, like I said before, I was looking for a place where I had worked with some really good teams in the past as a teacher, like, where everybody was going the same direction, same speed, velocity was really good. Everybody was on the same page. And that's actually where my kids go to school now, because I loved it so much we moved over here. So and then after that, I worked on a team that was not that way, where there was a lot of narcissism and blaming, and just people were difficult to deal with and didn't need to be. So I was looking for people that were really authentic, and I have, like, just like Ryan was mentioning earlier, one of my soft skills is, like, being able to discern, like, red flags. Like, as a teacher, like, I took child and all this stuff. So I'm always thinking about like, the situations I'm in and what's the cause of it, all of it. And when I went in for an interview there, I was just always looking for that kind of stuff and asking questions for it. So their job interview posts, job description, and the manifesto website stuff was really what kind of led me to them. And we've made modifications over the years to that, but I think that having, I will tell you, if it says like JavaScript Warlord Ninja on it, I'm going to literally roll my eyes and walk away. But I know that for some reason, if you're in the Bay Area or Austin, that's what all the job descriptions say. I don't know why. You have to be like a Herculean godlike JavaScript ninja warrior. It's just like, doesn't make any sense. And also it needs to be that it's not, there was one job description when I was in code school that was like, I think it was the University of Miami. I remember Sam Capula telling me about this. That was, I think they needed like, you need to be able to do like 10 WordPress sites and all the databases and keep these 10 sites up. And it was all this stuff that you had to know. And it was like $35,000 a year. And it was like, that's like $35,000 a month for the person that knows that stuff, like that doesn't make any sense. So it needs to be a realistic job description as well. Like if it's for a junior developer position, it shouldn't say like 7 years of experience. That doesn't make any sense. Like that person should be mid-level or senior level by now.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Were you looking for job titles like webmaster?
No, but I do run a site for a state music organization. It's mostly pro bono. They give me a couple of scraps here and there, and they always call me their webmaster, and I cannot. They're old gentlemen. I cannot break them of the habit.
I love it. Ryan, any thoughts on that to add on to what Mike was saying?
Yeah, for me, I think I was just looking for a job. Like if they're going to let me in the interview, like I did not care. But yeah, you do run into that kind of stuff where it's like you need 10 years experience to be a junior developer. I was looking for any and every opportunity just to get in the door. Because after you're in the door, it's, you build a network, you get some experience. After 2 years being a software developer, or web developer, whatever title you want to like put to it, you have a lot of opportunity. I think my main thing was making sure, because my last job was really unfulfilling. I was just kind of clock in, clock out, do your hours. I was looking to make sure that it was fulfilling, that there was growth, and that I was actually doing something. I know we don't have a lot of time, but real quick, I think in one of my interviews, I would ask questions to see how that person liked working there, or what does a typical day look like for a developer. And this particular place, I got the sense that they got done with their work and then they played cards. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I already did that. I want to do something fulfilling. I want to do something with my life. Yeah, I'm just looking for a job, but you got to have some sort of meaning in what you're doing. So.
Fun. We have another question in here. The question is, do you think you would have had the same success versus going into school physically? Assuming you were both on a physical campus. So maybe if you have any thoughts tied to that. I know obviously now being in the COVID times, learning looks a lot different than maybe it did previously, and our options are a little bit more limited, but I don't know if you guys have thoughts on whether or not you think that the physical location may have played into your success.
I know for me, going to Austin, like I said earlier, was really hard, but that separation from a ton of daily diversions was really very helpful to me, because I could spend, I'd stay at the Iron Yard until 6 p.m. and then I would take an hour break. And then, I was staying with a friend in Pflugerville, just north of Austin, which itself is quite a haul from downtown Austin, and go over there and then grab some dinner and then keep coding for like 3 hours, which I could not have done if I was helping get bath time and bedtime done. So there's that whole thing, but also I've met a lot of people through the meetup and the React meetup in Dallas where they have gone to like Dev Mountain, or I have a coworker now that was an intern. I was his mentor, and now he's he became full-time after like 5 weeks. He's a killer. And he went to the Dev Mountain in Utah remotely. And I think they had some people in Dallas that were also doing that, and they kind of met up occasionally. But that dude knows his stuff. So, I think for me personally, I like being in the office physically with other people, and if no one has their headphones on, go interrupt them, ask them a question. You can do some pair programming. It's a little more difficult remotely, but it's still like obviously there's so many successful companies like Basecamp and stuff that have only been remote. You know, it's obviously possible to do it great. I just know for me, it was helpful to be physical, but I don't know. It's a hypothetical that I didn't have to live through. I'm in the house right now with 3 students on school right now. So it's tough for them. I can tell you that.
And your video is not even cutting out. I'm impressed.
Yeah. They're at lunch.
Good timing. How about you, Ryan? Any thoughts on that?
I would say, I mean, you got to do what you have to do because we're in the situation that we have. You got to do the best you can, but I don't think I was going to sit myself down and open up some Code Academy and learn Java and how to, query a database and, map it to a business object. That was out of my realm of thought. My original plan was like, yeah, I'll continue to contract on the side. I'll learn coding and learn a job. For me, I was so naive to how expansive everything can be in coding, and the career field is so large. And I think that was pretty key for me to go and have CodeUp as that vehicle that kind of takes you to and helps you along the way. So that was very instrumental for me. So.
Very cool. Well, we're starting to come up on time, so I would love to with one final question, and then at the end, I would love it, or maybe while the other is talking, if you guys want to share if there are any places that you recommend people find you online, whether it's LinkedIn, social media. Mike, if you maybe want to link the React.js meetup again, or anything that you guys are kind of doing, or places that people can connect with you, I would love to do that. But why don't we end with the last question being, what piece of advice would you go back and give your former self, or maybe what piece of advice would you give to anybody right now who is job searching and trying to land their first developer role? What's kind of your big takeaway, or something that was important to you, some sage wisdom you can bestow upon them? And while the other's talking, if you want to drop some links or any contact info in the channel, that would be great.
I'll let Mike go first.
Ooh.
Yeah, I ended up talking, like I mentioned earlier, I see a lot of people that have I'm out of a boot camp or code school, and you're please hire me for my first job. At all of our events for React.js Dallas, we always have an open jobs mic, and it's just a good time for people to practice getting up in public speaking. And every once in a while, I know someone's looking for a job, and I'll go over and nudge their shoulder to hopefully get them up. But try to connect people that are looking for jobs and offering jobs. And we've been pretty successful at that over the years. I think Match has a lot of people that work for them that are from our meetup directly. It's been pretty cool. But I keep telling people that come back and have the same, if I see them a few months in a row, I'll take them aside and go, do you have a blog or any way that you're putting stuff online so people can see if you applied somewhere, they might, I know when people apply to our job, we go through and investigate this person. It's not oh, we don't like your name, or it's nothing like that. It's we go and look at all your stuff. If you applied for a React job and you only have Java and GitHub, it's literally impossible for us to know how you know anything about React. So I say that that's a real story that happens all the time with computer science master's degree students coming in. It's I would make sure that you have something that stands out, your resume looks a little different, your GitHub has things on it that portray the way that you want to be hired for this job. And then also that if you're going for a job and you're going to work at a place, or maybe interview for a place, learn some things about that company. I interviewed at Call-em-all, and we at the time, now Text-em-all, and it's a telecommunications company. They send out messages to people that are important, non-political, non-marketing, non-sales messages. And you've never gotten bad stuff from hosts, I promise. But I had questions about, okay, president of the company, hey, let's talk about the FCC. All right, let's talk about I went through and I had done my homework. So I asked really smart, I thought, questions, and it was helpful to do that. So, basically get your stuff together as far as the job that you want, and try to go for it and make yourself as successful as possible with learning about that company.
Awesome. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, everything he said. Study that company, go in there, know who the CEO is, know what the job description is, know what, study it, get there, go onto their website and see what their values are and what their projections are and where they headed technologically. And as far as preparing for your interview, and what Mike was saying, stop doing tutorials so much and just sit down and code the crappiest application you can. Just, even if it looks like a 90s whatever HTML page, like, just stop doing tutorials. There'll never be a substitute for sitting down and just typing away at a keyboard and making mistakes, and then making sure you have that in a public place where people can go and look. So that's about all I would say.
Cool. Where can people find each of you? I think it's actually going to boot us right at noon. So with our last minute and a half, where can people find you? We've got some LinkedIn, we've got Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Mike also posted his link to the React.js meetup that he hosts. So whether you are a developer who wants to attend, or maybe your company's interested in sponsoring, it looks like we've got some really good resources there. So thank you so much to both of you for coming out and chatting with us about your experience. This is really, really important stuff. It's really valuable information for anybody who's looking for a development role. So thank you so much. Hopefully we'll be able to get a copy of the recording later and maybe share that around as well, so we can let this wisdom be timeless and have your stories kind of live on. So, but yeah, feel free for any of our attendees. Jenny, who is a colleague of mine at CodeUp, also just dropped some information about CodeUp as well. So if you're interested, feel free to get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Caitlin Studley Potter. Feel free to reach out to us, codeup.com. We'd love to chat with you, and Ryan can speak to his experience about coming through our specific program, but our email is info@codeup.com if you'd like to reach out and get in touch with us. But I think that's all I've got. Anything else, Keela?
Man, well, you took all the words out of my mouth. Perfect.
Trying to wrap up like right at 11:59 so that didn't like cut me off mid-sentence. So good stuff.
Yeah, well done, Ryan. Mike, thank you for sharing your experiences. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Caitlin, awesome. Well done.
You know, I do my best. I only got one dad joke in, but I tried. So awesome.
You have time for one more.
I don't know. I'm not a dad. I can't. It's not in my blood. I can't make them as easily as other people can. But good stuff. Yeah, okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, and there's the next coding track session will be at 12:15. Navigating Imposter Syndrome with the CEO of CodeUp.
Nice.
You don't want to miss that. We'll see you back here, not here, but in that session at 12:15. Awesome.
Cool.
Yes.
Thanks, y'all.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.